Why don't we go ahead and get started? Welcome and thank you for being with us tonight for the East Bay Municipal Utility District Director, Ward 5 Candidate Forum. I am Ann McCarrigan of the League of Women Voters of Alameda. This forum is being co-hosted by the Alameda, Eden Area, and Oakland Leagues. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government and fights to make democracy work through education and advocacy. The League never supports or opposes candidates or political parties. It does make recommendations on ballot measures based on review and existing positions. Our leagues participate in vote411.org, an online collection of candidates' information. We encourage you to view the candidates' information there. If you have moved or changed your name or wish to change your party affiliation since you last registered, you need to re-register. Online voter registration is available at the Secretary of State's website, sos.ca.gov. It's secure and easy. The deadline to register to vote online is October 21st. Voters may also register to vote on Election Day and vote provisionally. Ballots will begin to be mailed out on October 7th. You can vote in person, by mail, or place your ballot in an official Alameda County ballot drop box. Whatever you choose, please remember to cast your ballot on or before Election Day, November 5th. I'd like to remind everyone that the candidates have all agreed to participate under the ground rules set for this forum. The League is very proud of their history of civil discourse and nonpartisan forums. This is an educational event, not a debate. Before we get started, there are some details review that will help you interact with the session. Microphones are muted for everyone except the candidates and the moderator. Video images will show the candidates and the moderator. Candidates will stay on screen for the entire forum and will mute until it's their turn to speak. We are recording this forum and we'll be posting it via our website and YouTube for the broader community to access. There are 3 candidates running for this elected office. All candidates were invited to participate in the forum, and those not able to appear were offered the opportunity to submit a 2-minute statement. We will begin shortly with opening statements. Our candidates will have up to 1 minute to deliver their statement. We will begin by handling questions for the candidates in the following manner. The League is proud of its outreach to the community. Questions for the forum have been solicited in advance from the community and from our local leagues. We have screened the questions to ensure they are fair and unbiased and to avoid duplication and anything inappropriate. The order of answering the questions will alternate, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. The chat function will not be active. Candidates, please keep an eye on the timekeeper screen. The clock will signal the candidates of the remaining time, and when their turn is up, as moderator, I may verbally give prompts as well. Remember that if you go over time, I will remind you, if you violate the ground rules, you can be muted, prevented from answering future questions, or removed from the forum. There will be no separate rebuttals. Following the questions, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. The order of the candidates has been assigned by the order they will appear on your ballot. We will now begin opening statements with Jim Odie.
Thank you, Ann. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. The League of Women Voters always puts on great forums. I think I counted this as my 6th forum for City Council, and you may not remember, I sat in for Rob Onto when he ran for Assembly because he had a City Council meeting. But as I mentioned, I ran 4 times for City Council, so I have 6 years service on City Council. You may know me in that role, or you may know me as a District Director for Assemblymember Bonta, serving the cities of Alameda, Oakland, and San Leandro. And our ward covers those 3 cities, plus San Lorenzo on the west side of the freeway. This is the first time this seat has been open in 24 years. Doug Linney has had an amazing term of service, and I'm honored to have his support, as well as that of Danny Wan, who served in this position before him. I think it's important that we elect someone that has experience. I have that experience both in policymaking and in serving constituents. As East Bay MUD is going to have 5 out of 7 new board members in the last 2 years, so it's critical that we elect experience. Boom. 1 second.
Thank you. So Alex Spare, if you would like to start with your opening statement now, that would be great.
Mm.
It looks like you're still muted, Alex. So if you can unmute, then you can get started.
Yeah, sorry, my
There we
mute
go.
button
That's okay.
got hit in there. I'm Alex Spare, and I've lived and breathed native plants for the last 5 years or so, and that's part of how I became interested in water policy. I have a background in physics, climate science, and environmental engineering, so I can read technical papers and I understand the climate realities that we're faced with: prolonged droughts punctuated by more water than we know what to do with. I sit on the Navy's Alameda Point Citizen Advisory Board. They're currently mitigating PFAS in the groundwater. Kind of interesting stuff. I'm a parent. I'm on my kids' elementary school board. I'm going into my 3rd year of organizing the garden lunch volunteers there. My background is actually in tech, where I've done security and disaster contingency planning in my distant past. I've done lots of organizing for my favorite free software project, KDE. My priorities are to keep our infrastructure in good shape, improve conservation, and protect the bay, cleaner water, and no dead fish. And thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now move into the questions. And Alex, we will start with you. I hope everyone is fine with a first name basis. Okay, so our first question is related to candidate qualifications and priorities. What expertise do you have that matches the responsibilities of an East Bay MUD director, such as negotiation skills required to collaborate with other water control boards? And what are your top priorities if elected?
Well, my top priorities are improving our conservation and future-proofing us from climate change and protecting the bay. In particular, we have problems with nutrient loading right now and more nitrogen in heat waves that causes dead fish. And I don't want dead fish, and we can control that. I have done all kinds of random organizing things in my past. And I think I can handle being on a board and doing weird negotiations. It's a complicated district. There's a lot of moving pieces. So that is why it is important to, I don't think it's anything that you can be like, oh yeah, well, I've done all this, so then I know what I'm doing, because there's a lot to it. So yeah.
Okay.
I guess I add a little, I've done advocacy work before. I've gone and done the Alameda housing element for bike and pedestrian improvements, for native plants, for more water in the Delta, and for school bond measures. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. All righty. Well, thank you. All right, Jim, would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I remember. Thank you.
Great.
Well, thanks, Ann, for the question. I'll kind of flip-flop the answer. To me, the top priorities are maintaining the quality, affordability, and availability of our water, right? We need to know that when you turn it on, it's going to come out, it's going to be clean, and it's also going to be affordable. I mean, the board position, just like any board position, whether it's school board or city council or board of supervisors, is a policy-making board. And, that's where I think my experience shines. I had 6 years as a member of the city council, and that was our role, to make policy. It wasn't our role to, arrest folks. It wasn't our role to pave the streets. It wasn't our role to fill potholes. It was our role to set policy. And the same thing on the board. The board member is not a pipe fitter. The board member is not a client scientist. The board member is not a water engineer. The board member is a policymaker. And the policymaker gives direction to the staff and takes staff recommendations and adopts policy. So, I mean, that's number one. Number two, you asked about working with other groups. I mean, I have the experience doing that too. You do that as a city council member, work on regional groups, statewide groups like League of Cities. That was pretty much my entire job for 6.5 years, waking up every day, going to work for the residents of Alameda, San Leandro, and Oakland in the Assembly Member's Office. And that was our job, to work together with various community organizations, environmental justice groups, social justice groups, local elected officials, boards and commissions, special districts, like this one, and like, the Eden Area Healthcare District, and so on. So, I mean, those are the things that I think are critical. There was one more thing I kind of wanted to throw in the last 20 seconds, trying to remember what it was. You mentioned Well,
expertise,
if I have,
and your top priorities.
I think I mentioned the top priorities, but I think, having that experience working with outside groups, and setting policy, I have scars to show that that's our job, and I know that's what it is, and don't need to be reminded.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Now, Jim, we'll start with you for the second question, which is going to be on climate change and water supply challenges. How would you ensure a reliable and sustainable water supply? Struggling tonight in the face of droughts, wildfires, climate change, and the new California water use targets? And how would you address emissions from wastewater treatment?
Okay, well, that's a lot to answer in 2 minutes. I mean, that is probably the main challenge facing the board and the agency, in the upcoming years, right? Because when it comes to drought and climate change, especially drought, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. I think our agency has done a very good job. If you look at the graph, you can see that as the population of the service area has gone up, the actual consumption has gone down. So we, as residents and the board, as setting policy, have done a good job of encouraging conservation. The agency recently purchased the Fremont Regional Water Facility, which is, kind of an extra supply in the event of a drought. We have other pressures that I think we need to be careful to avoid when it comes to, the supply of our water. For example, there's a developer out in Tassajara that outside of our service district, that wants to have some of our East Bay mud water. And I think those are the things we have to stand up and say no to, even if we can make money off of it. We have folks out in over the hills that use, our pristine lake water for irrigation, golf course irrigation, for landscape irrigation. Yet, we're going to ask our residents in San Leandro and San Lorenzo to drink recycled wastewater in the event of a drought. So those are equity issues I think we have to deal with. And you talk about, algae blooms. There was a project in Alameda where a data center wanted to come in and take water out of the bay, cool their equipment, and send it back in the bay a few degrees warmer. And that would have led to more toxic algae blooms. I was the only one against that at first, and I was able to convince my colleagues and rally the community to get a 5-0 vote and reject that lease. So, I mean, that's a thing I not only care about, but I have a record of fighting for and advocating for and being successful.
Thank you. Alex, would you like me to repeat the question?
Yeah, it was pretty long.
It was pretty long. I don't blame you. Okay, here we go. So, how would you ensure a reliable and sustainable water supply in the face of droughts, wildfires, climate change, and the new California water use targets? And how would you address emissions from wastewater treatments? Excuse me.
So, yeah. In some ways, the district has actually done a good job going and buying up water contracts and things. So they've got water sources. When we had our last major drought, there wasn't actually much of a problem because they just completed this thing there where they could get it off the Sacramento River. So our district's done a pretty good job. However, in the future, we're going to have prolonged droughts, and we don't know how long they'll be. And then suddenly we'll get lots and lots and lots of rain all at once. And it may or may not be snow up in the Sierra Nevadas. And if it's snow, then it can sit there until it melts, but we might get a heat wave early on, and then it all melts suddenly. And then lots of water, where do we put it? So we need to work on doing things like holding our water in groundwater and all kinds of stuff with recycling and I have a list here. Yeah, things to, because we don't know how much water we will actually need for how long. We have to be very careful with where we put our water out and who we give it to, and make sure that we have enough for as long as we need for those long droughts, because we don't know how bad it'll be. And as for the rest, I'm actually not sure what the first part was. The second part. There's a
the second part, no problem. So it was about emissions from wastewater treatments.
Right. And was there another part, or was that it?
That was about the water supply.
Okay. Yeah.
Reliability and sustainability.
Yeah. So sewage, there's a 77-page climate document that talks about how to go and reduce that. And I think, we go and look into that and follow the document because they've done a good job on that.
Okay, thank you. All right, Alex, we will begin with you on this one. This is water safety and infrastructure upgrades. What measures would you take to ensure East Bay MUD's water supply meets health standards? And how would you prioritize the capital improvement budget for infrastructure repairs like old pipelines and upgrades, such as to outdated wastewater facilities?
Well, so from my work on the RAB board, I'm kind of interested in PFAS, and PFAS are forever chemicals. And so I would be foregoing and testing. They do some testing, but I would want to test for more and make sure that none of them are coming into various places in our watershed. And make sure that we stay ahead of emerging contaminants like microplastics and that sort of thing, because we don't have to drink that. We want good water. We've got good water. We want to keep it that way. And then, what was the other half of that?
So one is on ensuring that water supply meets health standards, and the other is prioritizing the capital improvement budget.
So they've done some interesting work on figuring out what pipes need replacement, because pipes don't all need replacement, but if you're in a ground where it corrodes more, then it'll need replacing sooner. And so figuring out if a pipe actually has to be replaced or if it doesn't is kind of an interesting challenge. And we definitely want to make sure that we are replacing what we need to replace. And we want to make sure that we're doing the work because we're on all kinds of major earthquake fault lines. And we know that we'll have there's like a 30-something% chance of having a major earthquake in the next 6 years. So we want to make sure that we're covered for that. And that's where having things that are set and contingency plans and all of that is good to do, and that we should be doing it. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Jim, would you like me to repeat that?
Sure, if you don't mind, I'm sorry.
Not at all. Yes, these are a little bit on the long side, so I can appreciate that. Okay, what measures would you take to ensure East Bay MUD's water supply meets health standards, and how would you prioritize the capital improvement budget for infrastructure repairs like old pipelines and upgrades such as to outdated wastewater facilities?
Okay, well, I think I mentioned in the first question that quality is one of my top goals. So the agency has a strategic plan that they just recently adopted, and they also have a 2-year budget. The first year is, I think, 1.4 billion, and the second year is 1.3 billion. So they've already put together a capital improvement plan. So I didn't see anything in there that I would dive in day one and say we need to yank this out and redo. But that's kind of the role of the board member, right? We have to balance the 3-pronged stool, right? Providing quality, keeping rates low, paying for our employees, and improving capital. And that's what we did in the city council. That's what pretty much every board and commission does that is responsible for managing a budget. The one thing I will say, I do think we can do a better job with the purple pipes. Like I said, in San Lorenzo and San Leandro, we don't have a system of purple pipes. So we have an aquifer there of treated wastewater that we should probably use for irrigation and landscaping and not use for drinking. So those are the type of things I would prioritize, making sure that we have equity across the entire district, because the wealth in Orinda and Lafayette and San Ramon is quite a lot different than the wealth in our ward, which includes West Oakland, Fruitvale, parts of San Leandro, San Lorenzo. So I would be cognizant of that. But bottom line, this is what we did on city council every 2 years, and that's what you did as a school board member. You balance budgets based on your priorities and set spending targets and capital improvements, and try to do it in a way that was least impactful to your taxpayers. And in our case, it would be ratepayers.
Okay, thank you. leading right into the next question, which is on water rates and financial management. How can East Bay MUD balance water rates to maintain affordability for customers while ensuring financial stability and addressing underfunded legacy costs?
Okay, that's another loaded question. I mean, thankfully, East Bay MUD has 80%, favorability ratings from its customers, right? And if we were overcharging for water, I don't think it would be that number. And it also has pretty good Moody's ratings for finance, right? And so it's kind of an employer of choice and almost a model agency. I don't really talk much about what I did before I moved here, but one of my first jobs was at the phone company working, and that's a regulated utility. I mean, again, I'm not going to be the person that gets in the nitty gritty and setting rates, but I have that experience actually working on a rate case, understanding what it is to work for a regulated utility. We had a power authority, AMP in Alameda, that our city council was responsible for, along with the AMP board, and that was our responsibility too. So I think it's important that you can't ask people to pay too much, right? But our folks have been in this agency have been pretty good about keeping rate increases fairly low and fairly consistent with inflation. The one thing I think is critical, and I need to thank Board Member Marguerite Young and Andy Katz. During COVID, they put in a program where folks who cannot pay their bills won't get their water shut off. So that's something I want to make sure that we're able to continue to fund. And we're also restricted by Prop 209. We can't charge more than it costs to provide service. So those are things we have to keep in mind as we prioritize, our employee costs, our infrastructure, and then our rate structure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Alex, would you like me to read the question again?
Yeah, let's go
That's
for
all right. That's it. Okay. So how can East Bay MUD balance water rates to maintain affordability for customers while ensuring financial stability and addressing underfunded legacy costs?
So this is interesting because I started reading through the budget of this, and it was different because a lot of the organizations, not the PTA, but other organizations I've been on the board, they're looking more in like the number of months until they run out of money and have to close, or the number of years until they run out of money and then they have to close. EBMUD is interesting because they can actually issue their own bonds, and not only that, but they have the highest bond rating possible. So that's pretty nice. I've got to say, the board has done a really nice job. I would say rates for taxpayers, they've been between 6 to 8% for the last quite a few years now. And I don't really think that's sustainable. And that's a problem because we have a lot of things that we have to pay for infrastructure wise and climate projects and that sort of thing. So that's going to be one of the harder things, is how to do what we do for the future, and while still doing things like paying our workers so that they're happy. Because if you have your pipe fitters, they can't do work from home, they have to commute. And if they're not paid enough, then they have to commute from farther out and they might not stay. And then we have lots of high turnover, and we don't want that. So yeah, I would want to try to hold rates below the level of inflation, which hasn't been the case. And work to find the right balance for all of that, which is tricky, but they're certainly doing much better than I was expecting.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Let's see then, Alex, we will go into the next question. This is related to conservation, recycling, and water reuse. What are your views on water conservation and recycling, and how would you significantly ramp up water reuse efforts in the district?
I like it. I think it's very important, and that we need to be doing a lot more of it, because water that we are just reusing is easy water to have. So yeah, I'm thinking it's actually been a while since I read that document. Yeah, it's an interesting problem because people are used to getting our water from, some of the purest river stuff. And well, if we're adding in a little in the mix, people have high standards, so they start noticing. And the district actually does things like going and they purify the river water when we pull in some of the not as good of water, so people don't notice as much. That's not exactly related to recycling, but that is, yeah. For recycling, I would say more discussions with other stakeholders, and aggressively look for people who are willing to go and use water that's just been treated, that maybe not for drinking but could be used for other purposes, and see what we can do. Because there are some plans, and it's a matter of getting those plans to. That's bedtime for the kid. Um, um, Getting those plans and putting them into action, and finding more people who can do them, which, yeah, should be fun.
Okay, great. Jim, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I got it. Thanks.
Okay, great.
When I'm go second, sometimes I can write it down. So the agency does have a goal, I think a 2040 goal of recycling 20 MGD of water. So, that's been in place since I think 2012 with the Water Supply Management Program, 2040 plan. And I think they looked at it and re-updated it back in 2019. So that is on their agenda. The one thing about recycled water, it's a little more costly to provide than fresh water from lakes. And I don't want to harp on the subject too much, but again, San Leandro, San Lorenzo, East Oakland, we don't have a purple pipe infrastructure in there. So if we wanted to use the aquifer off of Heron Bay, we couldn't use it for recycle or for irrigation because we don't have that infrastructure. So I think that would be a priority of mine, to make sure that the residents in my district are able to, use that water for, watering golf courses and watering grass. Because, if recycled water is not good enough for the folks in Orinda and San Ramon to drink, then it shouldn't be good enough for the folks in San Lorenzo and San Leandro to drink. And if we're going to ask people to recycle water, we should make sure that all the golf courses in our service area are using recycled water, and make sure we have the infrastructure for that. So that's kind of where I feel on that. We can always do more, but it is costly.
Okay, all righty. Is our last question, and this is related to homeowners association and maintenance responsibility. Given the public safety consequences, do you think East Bay MUD should take responsibility for maintaining water and sewer lines for homeowners associations?
I take it that's me first.
Yeah, sorry.
This is a question I think I've never had in all this time talking about it. And I spent 10 years as the treasurer of my HOA on Bay Farm Island. So I have a little familiarity with that, the water pipes and the reserve studies and all things like that. I'd have to think a little bit about it rather than jump to conclusion. But I guess my first inclination would be, if the HOAs can afford it, and they've been putting away reserves for it, that I think they should still maintain that responsibility. Because there's a lot of HOAs, especially here in Alameda, right? Almost the big chunk of Bay Farm Island. There's Heron Bay, there's HOAs in San Leandro, there's HOAs in West Oakland. So, that's a lot of responsibility to add on an agency that, we're still, Moody's high rated, but, we don't want to do anything to damage that high rating. So I have to give that a lot more thought, but that's a really good question.
Okay, well, thank you. Alex, do you have what's your answer to that one? I can repeat if you'd like.
No, I wrote it down. So HOAs, this is interesting because I was actually talking to Andy Katz about this, and he was saying that for residential, at least, point of sale was being too slow, and not enough places were actually going and replacing their sewer laterals. So you still get those leaks and things like that going on. And what do you do to encourage people if you're a homeowner and maybe you're not ready to sell your home anytime soon? Then hey, go spend $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, go replace your sewer lateral. And that's something to look into. And I don't know how much it would cost to do for an HOA, but I imagine a little bit more. So yeah, I would want to talk more to folks to figure out what the best practice on this should be, because there should be some sort of, maybe it would be a good idea to have reimbursements or some sort of bonus if you go and replace your sewer lateral if you haven't done that in a while. Maybe that's a good idea. It should be looked at.
Okay, all righty. And so that completes our questions. And so now we will move on into the candidates who'll be making their closing statements. And so we'll do that in reverse. And I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning, but then this is reverse of what the candidates will appear on your ballot. So Alex, we will start with you.
So I've got kind of a weird background for this. I haven't been on city council like Jim Odie, but I have been going to city council meetings for the past few years, which is kind of a weird hobby. And I don't think hanging out with lobbyists or whatever is a necessary qualification for this job. And you can't just be like, oh, I read the documents and day one I'll step into things, because there's not, a lot of it has been oral tradition, I'm told. And they're actually putting in a governance document at tomorrow's board meeting for what, hey, how do things actually work? And I'd like to add that I'm endorsed by Empower Oakland, the Director of California Water Research, Deirdre Desjardins, Jay Morgan, past president of AFSMA Local 2019, Charlene Wing for Oakland City Council, Margie Sherritt, school board member, and Joan Robinson, Relay for Life organizer. And go look me up on social media. And yeah, I think it'd be kind of a fun job to have. And water's cool. And I don't like dead fish.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Mr. Odie, finish up with you.
Thank you. Thanks again for putting on this forum. I always appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone and share ideas and hear your thoughts. My name is Jim Odie again. I'm running for East Bay MUD, Ward 5. I'd be honored to have your support. I've been endorsed by the local Alameda Democratic Club, the Wellstone Democratic Club, the Alameda County Democratic Party, the Building Trades, Labor Council, the employee unions, AFSCME 444, and I have PTE 21. And also our Assembly member, Rob Bonta, and our outgoing director, Doug Linney. And I don't use their names just to have you say, well, he's supported by them, you should vote for him. No, that's not the reason why. I do it because look at why. Doug Linney, he's had 24 years of service. He and 5 of his other 6 colleagues have decided to support me. So they, above all people, know what it takes to be successful at this job. And Rob Bonta, who I worked for 6 years, working with constituents, setting policy. They know my record, they know my ability, and they have their faith in me. And I hope I can earn your faith and trust and vote as well.
Okay, well, thank you both so much for attending this forum. Now, we know some of you have not had your particular question addressed. We hope that you will contact the candidates directly for additional information. And once again, thanks to both of you for participating this evening. Thank you for taking time to become an educated voter for those in attendance and those who may be watching once it's posted. We also had many volunteers participating and want to thank them for their help. In particular, I always have to thank our Keisha, who does an amazing job behind the scenes. We welcome any of you to join the League of Women Voters in doing the hands-on work to empower voters and defend democracy. Please go to any of our local websites for that assistance to find out more information. Most importantly, please vote on Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Thank you all.